So welcome to our second pair of quarterfinals here. This is Jim Davis, the reigning Players Champion, versus Jeffrey Serwinski. Jim will be defending his title in 2 weeks, but what a run-up to that would be if he becomes an invitational winner as well. That'd be something Jim has yet to do. He is on the play for game one of our set, and players will trade tap lands to start.
For Jim, he definitely would like to have had a one-mana play on turn one, though this is not the most relevant part of the game. He wants to hit at least 3 lands, get some bodies on the battlefield here.
So Smuggler's Copter will be the first play for Jim Davis to go back to Serwinski. So the Esper aggro, what is this deck? If you have not seen it this weekend, it is your traditional blue-white flash deck. However, Jim has cut Selfless Spirit, he has cut Archangel Avacyn to go more aggressive with cards like Toolcraft Exemplar and Scrap Heap Scrounger.
And it looks like the only white source in Jim's hand was this Prairie Stream here. That's why I led on it. Then the island was his second land. He did just draw planes off the top, but he has multiple copies of Thraben Inspector in hand. So his development was delayed a little bit, though on this turn he'll be able to start casting 2 of these cards. Looks like Revolutionary Rebuff is the last card in his hand. Unfortunately for Jim, that can't counter an Aetherworks Marvel, but it can counter a number of the other spells in the Aetherworks deck. Say Cathartic Reunion or Ishkana would be great things to tag. Of course, if Jeffrey had a reunion, he would have cast it on the previous turn.
Yeah, Jim was tapped out. Now, remember, these are known deck lists. Jim does have 2 copies of Revolutionary Rebuff in the main deck. So for Jim Davis, here's his first creature. It's going to be a Toolcraft Exemplar. That dwarf can certainly drive a Smuggler's Copter.
Now for Jim, I would like crewing with the Exemplar, attacking with the Copter, leave up rebuff through combat, because I would rebuff a Harness Lightning here.
Yeah, absolutely. Smuggler's Copter is great, especially if you have cards like Thraben Inspector. So here we see a crew of the Copter. Jeffrey will pull the trigger on Smuggler's Copter, but no rebuff for Jim. The vehicle is in the graveyard, and Scrounger will be the play.
Yeah, also totally reasonable not to rebuff. He will be saving it for Ishkana as this game progresses, which is another great target for the counterspell. Though Jim is really going to want to find a Spell Queller here soon. Jeffrey on the next turn is very likely, if he untaps just with his battlefield because of the Servant of the Conduit, he already has Aetherworks Marvel mana. So Jim gets into a lot of trouble as soon as that permanent's on the battlefield.
All right, so I swing from Jim. The Toolcraft Exemplar, actually, Jeffrey will trade his Servant to the Conduit away for it. There are not enough artifacts for it to have first strike yet, so that trade holds. Jim follows up with a pair of Thraben Inspectors down to 1 card. As he go back to Serwinski. This is his 4th turn, so it looks like if he has a card like Aetherworks Marvel, he didn't actually need that ramp.
Right. Coast will be clear to cast it. He just has 2 energy at this point in time, and Jim does have 5 power on the battlefield. So Jeffrey's got to get something going here. Looks like he does not have the Marvel. Plays Tireless Tractor, and then Jim is actually thinking about rebuffing the Tracker. So Jeffrey has paused before he's able to make a land drop here. And yeah, Jim will rebuff the Tracker.
Great play by Jim. Now, was the rebuff, that wasn't drawn. He actually let the Harness Lightning resolve the previous turn?
He let that resolve. I assume a big part
so good.
A big part of Jim's decision there is he followed up with Scrounger, which has the same amount of power as the Smuggler's Copter, and a bunch of cards he didn't really want to loot away necessarily.
Yeah. Getting a big reward, though. No defense, no Tireless Tracker for Serwinski. Jim, empty-handed now, will go to his turn, swings for 5, and drops his Aetherworks opponent down to 12. He does have those 2 clues, though, sitting off at the top of the screen, so 1 card in hand only for the moment.
I like what Jim just did here. He cracked the first clue proactively. If he had another threat, he would want to play it. He can't really Spell Queller here. If Jeffrey had the Marvel, he would have cast it on that turn anyway, so he doesn't need Spell Queller right away. Not to mention that Jeffrey's still shy on energy. Jim just has to focus on killing him.
So go back to Serwinski. He's taking 5 a turn. It looks like it could be a 3-turn clock, at least on the board. Something like Spell Queller, though, could switch it up. So Jeffrey will play another blocker. This is Servant to the Conduit. It actually will hold off the Thraben Inspectors if there's no reply from Jim. And over on our other feature match, the first game is in the books, and it is Collins Mullen taking game 1 over Ben Friedman in that Marvel mirror. Jeffrey playing Servant and then playing Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. And you know, this is something Patrick talked about when we watched Jim's last game. Because of the way this Esper aggro deck's built, the life gain off Puzzle Knot actually represents multiple turns.
Yeah, the Puzzle Knot, just the casting and then the activation, each of those is worth an entire swing from the Scrap Heap Scrounger. That's quite significant here. Thraben Inspector is pretty anemic on the beatdown spectrum. It's a good value card.
Yeah, a 2/2 blocker holds off the 1/2s, and this 2-mana artifact takes 2 turns away from the Scrounger. That's a lot of great defense by Serwinski.
Yeah.
Also there, you see Serwinski missing a land drop there. What he did do to compensate, and I really like this, he had his pair of true drops leading on the Servant to the Conduit so that Revolutionary Rebuff was never a live counter spell.
Yeah, can't hit an artifact with that one. Good sequencing there, and Jim does have his second rebuff in hand.
So land 5 from the Guru's Captain. It's going to be Stasis Snare. That'll take care of the Servant of the Conduit. And this is a very aggressive line. Jim swinging for 5 will put Jeffrey down to 9.
If Jeffrey starts marveling, that Stasis Snare is not likely to have a very significant impact, so I do like getting aggressive here.
All right, here's the first firing of Aetherworks Marvel from Jeffrey Serwinski. 6 cards, he'll get one for free. He has 6 cards. It looks like it was a tune with Aether, Cathartic Reunion. I'm not sure he hit.
Now this looks like it's going to be one of those marvels to build more energy to a second activation.
Yeah, Attune with Aether is the choice. Let down for Jeffrey. Now at 10 life, he still has time to build another firing for the Marvel. I mean, it's on the board, right?
Yeah, he has the Puzzle Knot. However, I expect Jim to rebuff this Attune with the Aether.
Interesting, okay. Shuffles put it on the bottom. Yeah, Jim has not let that resolve yet. And now he has a big decision. He could counter here, or maybe he could let the Aetherworks Marvel trigger resolve on the next one and try to counter the spell. But you're right, he's going to counter Attune with the Aether.
Yeah, currently Jeffrey does have 4 energy kind of floating in that Puzzle Knot that'll get him up to 5, but the Attune gets him to a full activation. Jim potentially buys enough time to clock Jeffrey this way.
And to talk about a clock, here's a swing for 5 more and a third Thraben Inspector from Jim Davis. Remember that Puzzle Knot gains 3.
Yes.
It's Patrick wasn't kidding on that. You know, this Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot is actually very good against Jim's deck.
Yeah, this card has been very impressive against aggressive decks. As long as you are drawing the other spells that you want, it's less good than something that manipulates your draws usually, but as long as everything else is working properly, this card is great.
Vessel of Nascency is the play for Jeffrey, and then he passes. This means there will be no Aetherworks Marvel this turn. And actually, the Vessel will not resolve. It's Spell Queller from Davis. That puts him up to, I believe, enough power to make it lethal, right? That is, well, it's 7. It's not 8.
Looks like
no,
eight
it is 8. You're right.
Triple Inspector, Scrounger, Spell Queller.
So even through the Puzzle Knot, he's got him.
Yeah. And something like a Harness Lightning could at most gain 3 life as well. There's only 3 power attacker there.
Back to Jim. Is this lethal? We will see in a second. And this win, not how Jim would draw it up. This was, I think, a lot scrappier than he would like. The kind of thing where you need just enough Thraben Inspectors to dodge a Puzzle Knot, but he'll take it.
Yeah, in game 1, this is how his wins are generally going to look. He would prefer to be Spell Quellering the Marvel, of course, but Jeffrey wasn't able to produce the requisite energy. Post-sideboard, things only get better for Jim, so winning game 1 here is very significant.
Swing and game for Jim Davis. Esper aggro takes game 1.
All right.
Yeah, this is some really scrappy magic out of Jim Davis. Wow.
Yeah, Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Right, it's just on it's even in the card names.
Very thematic, very good deck building.
Well, the Scrounger was actually, let's look back at the changes they made to the blue-white deck. I really liked Scrounger that game. It did a lot of early damage. Thraben Inspector's in both builds, so, you know, no real one way or the other on that.
Yep. Also, just the Toolcraft Exemplar trading with that Servant of the Conduit as just kind of another copy of Scrap Heap Scrounger for whatever it was actually worth, but just being that aggressive.
All right, so we're going to, remember, they're not going to go to the sideboards just yet. The players do not get to sideboard until game 3 starts.
Yeah, so Jim's going to have to try to pull another one out with Spell Queller being his most significant interaction. Though that game we did see he was able to leverage his 2 revolutionary rebuffs quite effectively. Again, that card cannot counter Aetherworks Marble, but we saw it hit that attune with the Aether to turn off relevant energy. And buy a lot of time. It also hit that tireless tracker so that there wasn't any trading happening in combat.
So for Jim Davis, he is the captain of Metagame Gurus. He's also your Players Champion last year. He actually entered the elimination rounds at the Players Championship as the last seed, but won on the back of an insane metagame call. He took his opponents all on Jeskai Black, and he Emrakul his way through them. And you know, this weekend you called him to win the top 8, and it feels like he can run back that strategy again, right? Looking at the decks in this bracket, you know, Jim is a great player in his own right, but you have to think he's getting 5 to 20% in all of his matches today because of the deck he's chosen.
He's playing a build that's particularly bad against a spot removal heavy deck like Joe Bernal's. Well, Joe's out of the top 8. That was the matchup that Jim was most afraid of. He's aggressive, he's a lot of tempo, he has counter spells for these Aetherworks Marbles going in these 5-game sets. So yeah, Jim's metagame call is looking quite solid here, and as we see him up a game in his quarterfinal matchup.
So, he's going to have a repeat trip to the Players' Championship in 2 weeks to defend his crown. Jim will be on the draw for this game. For the captain of Metagame Gurus, Jim Davis, a radio DJ, also popular streamer over on twitch.tv. He is at twitch.tv/JimDavisMTG, does a weekly stream as well. Him and a lot of his team, not only a big presence here on the SCG Tour, very involved in the community in teaching and coaching for players wanting to do well on the tour. A lot of great stuff here. Now, over StarCityGames.com, we have the Creature Collection. That, of course, is your favorite art. From some of them from our game nights, some of them just from our own in-house artists. We have the Ferret now available on playmats, sleeves, and player bundles. Of course, we also have some from game night as well. The December promo, Fintuition, you know, one of my favorite cards from Tempest. You can get it in fish form also on all these things. So find these and more now available in the store over at StarCityGames.com/Creature Collection.
Thinking of a Manatee parody meditation. Manitation. I think that would be your favorite.
Well, the 3-mana draw 4 is great.
It's not a bad rate, right?
Yeah. There's not really a drawback to the card either.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to win on that turn, so what do you care about?
It's like how Ideas Unbound is the best card drawer, right?
I lost to that card a fair number of times in Pauper when Grape Shot was legal in the format.
Jim going to 5 here. He has some ways maybe to recover. He doesn't actually have card advantage. It's all card selection.
Yeah, his deck's pretty low to the ground, so if he's able to just make his first 3 land drops or even stumble on the 3rd for a turn, he probably wants to hit it against Jeffrey's best hands. He wants to hit his first 3 land drops, maybe stop there exactly, have a 1-drop, a 2-drop, and a Spell Queller, and that could be a recipe for victory here.
It could even be something like turn 1 Inspector, turn 2 Cracker Clue,
yep,
turn 3 Queller, turn 4 Gideon, boom, Jim's in it. You can do that on 5 cards.
Definitely.
You're always down for an Elvish Visionary.
Right, big fan of Elvish Visionary. Not huge on basic planes, so I haven't cast a lot of Thraben Inspectors in my time, but I can appreciate what the card does.
Can we say it might even be a better Elvish Visionary?
I mean, you can say whatever you want, and you are correct, but I don't like it.
Outside of the mana cost?
I mean, full disclosure, I do own a foil Thraben Inspector. It's in my Pauper Cube, but for a much longer time, I have had multiple foil Elvish Visionaries.
Now, do you play shards, foils, or the promos for Elvish Visionary? Because right, there is a foil promo, I believe, of the card.
There is. I'm off promos. I try to go for the first set that the card was printed in common.
Okay.
Alara block promos are a little bit lame because there was the foil pack.
Right.
But the FNM promo, I do not like the art.
I respect the originals. Like the foil Primeval Titans I play, like are definitely from the core set. They're They're M11s. I'm not doing the Grand Prix promos.
Right.
Unless we're playing the white bordered ones, because you can't white border the foils. So we have 2 sets. We have the nice foil M11s, and then we have the ones that are like modern mastered, white bordered, Sharpied on. Those ones. They're both great. Jim, on 5, we believe?
4. 4, actually.
It is 4.
Are you the kind of person that would alter a Primeval Titan to have a Valakut in the art? The people used to do that with Tinker. They would get their Tinker altered to have a Dark Steel Colossus on it.
All right, so they're going to get ready for game 2. We are going to fix our technical difficulties as soon as we can here. It is Jim Davis on the left, and his opponent is Jeffrey Serwinski on the right. Jim's on a 4-card hand. We'll see if he gets to compete. The turn 1 play from Serwinski is a tune with the Aether for 2 energy, finding a mountain. Jim starts on Prairie Stream.
Yep, and this is what Jeffrey wants to do to start the game. This is all really good. Serve another conduit on 2 as well, so he's building energy here. If he has an Aetherworks Marvel and a 3rd untapped land, he can get that under any potential spell quellers on this turn. This is a great start here.
Yeah, serving the conduit for Serwinski, Scrounger for Jim. Now he plays it off Concealed Courtyard. Recall that is that Black Splash just for the activation on the Scrounger.
Yep.
So turn 3, it's another attune for Serwinski. Puts him up to 6 energy. That is the key number here.
Yep, and Jim's hit his first 2 land drops. Looks like he has a 3rd. Unfortunately, I believe he has a blue-white card that is not Spell Queller. Looks like a Reflector Mage. It's going to be much less impactful in this matchup.
After post-attune, we will see from Serwinski a Cathartic Reunion, doing this while the mana is down, discarding some Vessels and drawing 3. Getting at least 2 lands and a Puzzle Knot, looks like. Now this is interesting, right? Because if the game is going to be very slow, then playing and cracking Vessels is actually better than discarding them to Cathartic Reunion.
Yeah, they're better card selection. I think that's something that he's up to. He has an Ishkana in his hand already.
Okay.
So building up Delirium by getting that enchantment there, though he doesn't have Delirium to cast it next turn anyway.
Reflector Mage picks up the Servant. Yeah, and it's just interesting, right? Because sacrificing a Vessel is also a great Delirium enabler.
Right.
First points of damage in. Jeffrey Serwinski drops down to 17 off the Scrap Heap Scrounger. He is on your right.
If he's unable to produce an Aetherworks Marvel, then I'll be pretty surprised at looking back that he discarded both Vessels. I don't know if he has a 3rd Vessel in the grip.
He does. That makes more sense. The odds that you can play and sacrifice 3 Vessels, that's pretty out.
Right.
He will play land 4, though. It's Game Trail.
If things really go according to plan, he should be using all of his mana starting on turn 5. He should be, he's hoping to be able to cast an Ishkana with Delirium on the next turn, and likely has plans from his mana henceforth.
A shrug and a shove from Jim. He puts Jeffrey down to 12, plays another Scrounger. 1 card left in hand, says go. Really forcing Jeffrey to combo.
Yeah, and Jeffrey is looking to establish Delirium here. We'll see if he can do that with the Vessel.
Oh, boom. He may not do that with the Vessel, but what he does do is he puts Aetherworks Marvel in his hand.
Gets that and does hit Delirium, so he has his choice of starting the Marvel or just casting the Ishkana to get some presence on the battlefield here.
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. He may go for the Ishkana just because if he Marvels and misses here, he could lose the game.
Right, he's facing down 8 points of power to be dropping to 4 if he played a Marvel and whiffed. I think that the Ishkana is the play that I would make. It's certainly the safe play. It's the conservative line. It's not the strongest if Jim just has Declaration in stone, but there's no guarantee that your Marvel is going to be better.
Here is the Graph Widow. Now, he did take a risk. Jim had 2 mana up and 1 card remaining. He was opening himself up to Revolutionary Rebuff, but decided it was worth it. Asks Jim, do you have it? Jim says no. Here we have 4 spiders now.
And there are only 2 rebuffs in Jim's deck.
And if you haven't seen it before, Graph Widow is such a brick wall against these aggressive strategies.
Yes.
Jim just kind of looks, and he knows that there's a Marvel in Jeffrey's hand, 6 energy in play. This was a good fight for a 4-card hand. He forced Jeffrey to take a risk on the Ishkana.
Yeah, he was able to put up a good amount of pressure, though just doesn't really have the follow-up. He just has a couple of mopey creatures on the battlefield, and Ishkana is great at blocking. 3/2s against multiple 1/2 spiders is a very good combat pairing for Team Spider.
Yeah, so 2 spiders go to 2/4. Jump in front of the 3/2. It ends up being 1 spider for 1 3/2.
Yep.
And now here comes the fun part of the deck. Marvel, tap, sacrifice 6 energy. Let's get a free spell. And Jeffrey, you know, his May Furtherworks Marvels they're not doing it for me here.
Yeah, and he has played a build that he goes up to 9 great hits with all these Ulamogs.
Choice between Cathartic Reunion and Attune with the Aether. Or Servant of the Conduit, rather. He'll play the 2/2, get 2 energy. Now, if you play a Cathartic Reunion for free off of a Aetherworks Marvel, there's some bad news to this.
Right, it is an additional cost to cast a spell. You get around the mana cost, not around additional cost. You would still have to discard. Same is true getting the spell back off of a Spell Queller, which is very unfortunate for the Reunion player.
Yeah, it's just just don't get that card countered.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey does not hit on his Aetherworks Marvel, but he gets to reload very well. Plays the Puzzle Knot afterward, going up to 5 energy. Jim just land and pass. So between the Attune, the Puzzle Knot in play, the Harness Lightning, another Servant from Jeffrey, tons of energy, and looks like we are going to plug in the Marvel again. Now, do you think they're building Emrakul inside the Aetherworks Marvel? It'll be Ulamog, right? Is this a machine that's building Ulamog, or is it like bending time and space and Ulamog's coming through?
A magician does not reveal his secrets.
Ulamog's here. He's going to exile away 2 of Jim's creatures. Now, some attacks from Jeffrey. No blocks. Jim's creatures can't. See, I kind of first thought they build it because like Aetherworks means it's like a manufacturing plant, or you got a manufacturing thing, right? You know, like Ironworks, Aetherworks, we're just building with Aether, except that then it would maybe make Ulamog an artifact, so that doesn't really work. There's some flavor tension here.
It's magic, man.
I guess if we're working the Aether, Aether's part of time and space, so that probably means that the bending theory is more sound.
How long do you suppose you could have this conversation with Ross Miriam for?
Well, then we have to talk about how that works, and you know, that's one of the harder parts of science fiction is you want to have the fantasy element, but it still needs to be justifiable. So then we'd have to talk about what is Aether, right?
Kind of lost me when you said that you have to talk about this.
The illusion doesn't work if it's not consistent. You know, myself, I'm a big fan of the hard science fiction genre for that reason, right? So we'd have to talk about like, what is Aether? Why is it able to do these things? Maybe we'd be talking about, you know, some property of neutrinos that Aether involves. And then we'd say, does that allow him to bring Ulamog into play? It certainly allows him to win the game. Jeffrey's going to do that, and now we're 1-1.
Yep, had his Ulamog Reflector Mage, but had plenty of presence on the battlefield otherwise. The more realistic you try to make your description of nonsense, the more you end up with the appearance of coming up short. If I just tell you it's magic, it's nonsense, then you're like, oh, okay, well, I don't like that, but that's fine. But if I try to give you a scientific explanation and it's close but wrong, I actually look like a bigger idiot.
No, it's a hard science fiction is a very difficult genre for exactly the reason you described. Mm-hmm. I completely agree. But I'm saying is we still should strive for excellence here. We can do it. We just have to know.
Not my job,
It's why we ask these questions. So I'm going to ask you a different question. Let's look at some sideboarding now. One game apiece pre-board.
This one is my job.
All right. Jim Davis, he's the reactive deck. You have to assume that something like especially Green Red Aetherworks is losing value after sideboarding because of how linear it is. So Jim's got 3 Selfless Spirits, a Stasis Snare, a Negate, 3 Spell Shrivels, a Sky Sovereign, 2 Avacens, so he didn't cut them completely. A Thalia, the 3/2 Thalia, a Declaration in Stone, that's an additional one, and then 2 copies of Fragmentize.
So what's for sure coming in is this Negate and these 3 Spell Shrivel having more ways to counter the Aetherworks Marvel, and also the Spell Shrivel will cover Ishkana as well.
Yeah, Ulamog, Ishkana, Emrakul, Marvel, sure, every counter spell's probably fair game.
When we get to Jeffrey's side, you see some Kozilek's return there, and for that reason I expect Jim to reach for Selfless Spirit and Archangel Avacyn. Avacyn also great at combating Ishkana.
That's super interesting. So we have a lot of his sideboard coming in now.
Yep, and likely one, if not both, copies of the Fragmentize as well, in case a Marvel is landed just as a hedge.
Well, that's the interesting part. So I know I'm going to use something from Modern here. A lot of times, if I play a Primeval Titan deck, people will board in removal for the Titan, and I'll say, hey man, you're fighting the wrong fight. You got to win before I Titan. And to be fair, Marvel's kind of similar. And I would say thinks are there like, yeah, killing Marvel sounds great, but is the fight over at that point? Like do you need to answer, like if I play the Marvel, tap it, and then you fragmentize it, do you win or do you already lose that game?
If Jim could play any standard legal card instead of the cards registered in his sideboard, he would turn these fragmentize into more negates or another spell shrivel. He doesn't have that luxury.
Is it any good then?
You can still win when you fragmentize a Marvel after one activation. It's not
Primeval
the
Titan.
best option.
Yeah.
Right.
That's fair. So, okay, so we have the counter spells, and we have some defense against Kozilek's return.
Those are the big ones.
Indestructibles.
The fragmentize is a maybe, exactly for what you described.
All right. We're going to get to Jeffrey Serwinski in a second here. Now, this is our last event of the 2016 season. And actually, right now, we are kicked off the 2017 season here in Atlanta in our Standard Open. It's running right now in day 2. We do take a break for the Players' Championship and the holidays, but we are back in January with the full 2017 season here on the SCG Tour. So the tour runs in 2 seasons next year. We have January through June, that's season 1, and we have July through December, that's going to be season 2. We're happy to announce season 1. Come join us here on the tour. We're going to be all over the eastern U.S. So we'll be in Columbus, we'll be in Richmond. These are our Standard Opens to start the season. All over the United States, East, West Coast, Middle, we have our regional championships. Those are February 4th. They are modern. 2 weeks later, we have the Baltimore Open Weekend. Now, this is a new format that Star City Games is doing. It is a team-constructed format, so you and 2 friends play. One of you plays Standard, one plays Modern, one plays Legacy. You play against someone on the other team in your same format, and whichever team wins 2 of those 3 matches wins the round.
Really excited about this tournament. I like this a lot better than Unified Constructed, that's for sure.
I can tell you I will be playing or casting this, one of the 2. I will be there in Baltimore regardless. Indianapolis is the next week. It's in Modern. It's Modern. Then we have Dallas in Modern. And our Legacy Open. It's April 8th through 9th. It's in Worcester, Massachusetts. So for you Legacy players, I know there's a chance to play those cards in a high-level tournament. Put that one on the calendar. That's going to be it for our tournament for Season 1. I suppose Baltimore also works. There is a third of that tournament is Legacy.
Yep. You'll have to cross the streams and find some filthy Modern and Standard players.
I mean, I know, for example, for my situation, like, I definitely want to find a Legacy specialist to help complement the team that I'd play on.
You got some good people to pick from in Minnesota.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think you will be in high demand as a Legacy player for that event.
I'm playing Modern, though, because I'm stubborn.
We then have other events. We have Atlanta Standard. We're back here at the end of April to play. Then 3 weeks later, we'll be in Louisville to play Standard. We'll be back in Baltimore for Modern, and then we end the season in Charlotte for Modern Open, and at the end of June, we have our Season 1 Invitational. These are in Roanoke, Virginia, at Star City Games. It is the 30th through the 2nd, both Modern and Standard. So come on out and join us. And we also have new playmats for the season. These are exclusive to the Star City Tour. We have 3 different playmats, 1 for each format. So for Standard, Opens, and Classics, we have Smuggler's Copter playmat. For modern ones, we have the Aether Vial playmat. That is the masterpiece art from Kaladesh. And for modern, we have Gamble here. That's the Eternal Masters version. These are given away. They are free with entry to any Season 1 Open or Classic. You can get each of these any weekend through our Opens, Classics, and Infinite Challenges. More on that later, though. We're going to get back to the match. 6 cards a piece at the moment. Now, last time Jim was on 4, that was a bit of a disaster. A 6-on-6. A lot of times the combo ramp decks, for example, hate mulliganing.
Yes.
Combo decks love mulliganing in the sense of they frequently don't care.
Pre-sideboard, both players had a very small subset of cards that they were specifically drawing to. For Jeffrey, it's the Marvel plus Energy. For Jim, it's Pressure plus Spell Queller. Post-sideboard, Jim has such a higher threshold of cards that matter. A double mulligan, I think Jim is definitely going to be favored in this interaction post-sideboard.
So I did want to take a second and look at Serwinski's sideboard. You mentioned the 3 Kozilek's returns, and especially because Davis is on Toolgraft Exemplars and Scrap Heap Scroungers, these are a slam dunk. But there's another part of his sideboard I actually wanted to look at. It's Tireless Trackers, copies 2, 3, and 4. It's 2 copies of Bristling Hydra. Can he do this in this matchup? Is this a place he wants to be?
Jim is so low to the ground and aggressive. I don't think this is where you try to meet him on aggression. I think he's reaching for those Kozilek's returns just to try to sweep things up.
So nothing like you can't tracker. We're just staying in the combo deck. Don't go to your mid-range plan.
Yeah, I don't think so. You might see some number of trackers, though. If Jim just still has Reflector Mages in his deck, that's really good against Tireless Tracker. It'll help him buy some tempo and get ahead of that and further his beatdown plan when you have to use so much of your mana just to cast a 3-mana 3/2. You know, Tracker is good against Negate, that's for sure, and Jim should be going a bit lower on stuff to interact on the battlefield, but the flying creatures and just 3-power creatures put a lot of pressure on Tracker before it becomes relevant.
Jim keeping a 6, it's a close 6. Serwinski perhaps to 5. Now as these guys have sideboarded for their third game, our other match, which we will try to get to, Ben Friedman on our backup table versus Collins Mullen, also evened up as they sideboard. Ben Friedman taking the second game. Now that one is an Aetherworks mirror, Naya versus Green-Red.
Okay, so technically Collins did break serve, but it's all evened up before sideboarding.
Yeah, the big difference you mentioned in their matchup, Ben Friedman has the card Sigarda Heron's Grace in the sideboard.
Yep.
If you give yourself hexproof, Emrakul cannot steal your mind.
It can still be a 13/13, but a very relevant part of the card is no longer in play.
You know, I'm just realizing now, that was probably an intentional flavor move.
It is the angel sister that did not get turned into a horror.
Right. Because she has hexproof. Well, she doesn't have hexproof, but she gave... it still works.
The original Sigarda also had play against the original Emrakul because you couldn't sacrifice it.
Right, yeah, you couldn't... The Eldrazi couldn't beat her. So Sigarda's just always been really good against the Eldrazi. She fights them on their...
She's still a lot smaller.
She's unaffected by them.
Yeah. After the Eldrazi beat you up as a player, Sigarda's hanging around, doing her own thing.
Right, you can't sacrifice. Okay. If only she could beat them in combat, then she would have saved the whole plane.
Yeah, so Sigarda technically has a text box that is relevant against Eldrazi. You know what the original Sigarda was actually really good against? Fair mid-range decks.
Yeah, I know what it was good against. I registered that card.
You can't Liliana the Veil that one.
No, you just
that was
an Amulet Bloom thing. You'd put it into play against Jund and then just kind of, just throw up your hands and say, I'm not sure. Can you kill this? Are you playing a Damnation? It's great. It's a good and interactive Magic card. You can't target it or make them sacrifice it.
It's fun.
If you give it double strike with a land, it's like it doesn't die in combat. It's
like a slippery bogle that comes with a Sarah's Embrace.
You can't make them sacrifice it either.
Right, and it's also bigger than just a Sarah's Embrace. It's like 2 of them.
So it looks like we're having two rough games here. Last game, Jim Davis is on 4. Jeffrey returns the favor. He takes 4. Jim's on 6. So if he's kept a speculative 6, say a 1-lander with a good curve that needs to hit a second land, Jeffrey can win.
For Jim's deck, if he kept a hand that's heavy on lands, that would be a good way to... He doesn't really have mana sinks. That could also be very problematic.
Yeah, his deck does rely on a good distribution of lands and spells, but so far he'll do just that. 2 lands and Scrap Heap Scrounger is the start for the player's champion.
It looks like he does still have at least some number of Reflector Mage in his deck post-sideboard, as he does have one in his hand here. We'll see if he wants to save that for a tracker.
Yeah, 3rd land and passes. He had the option of just Reflector Maging nothing there to get more power onto the board. He declined so that he could hold up, it looks like...
Spell and Queller.
Yeah. Okay.
His hand is great. The Reflector Mage is definitely the weak link.
Says go. I was interested if he was going to end step Queller there just to get more pressure on because he has the second counter.
If he was interested in getting aggressive with a 2/3, I think you definitely would have seen him cast the Reflector Mage on his main phase.
Well, Jeffrey's first play of the game is going to be an Aetherworks Marvel, but Jim will quell that with the 2/3 Spirit. So now he does increase his clock up to 5 power, and Jeffrey down to 9 life.
Yep. 3-turn clock, now 2-turn clock with this turn happening here with Spell Shrivel in the grip.
I think he drew another Queller. So if we were at a 2-turn clock with 2 counter spells, I like the math on that.
I've played a lot of games in this position. Feels pretty good.
Did you lose any of them?
No.
Yeah, I think just no. I was trying to come up with like, well, if they thrun, yeah.
Cavern of Souls can cause you to lose some of these games.
Okay.
Against,
nothing like that from Jeffrey.
Against Bant Eldrazi, the reality smasher off Cavern of Souls. That's pretty much what it is.
Now, yeah, but if it was anything else, Spell Queller even gets around that, right?
It does.
Doesn't counter the spell.
Exiles it.
So if Jeffrey caverns up a 5-drop here, you're saying there's a chance.
If he plays Cavern of Souls on Spider and somehow manufactures Delirium, which he does not have, this surprise Ishkana and
Street Wraith into Gitaxian Probe, crack a fetch land.
Mishra's Bobble. There you go.
Boom. Natural State cast on Scrap Heap Scrounger. Jim is deciding if he wants to counter this. His Spell Shrivel and his Spell Queller are both good here.
So he has 5 lands. He'd be pretty comfortable countering this if he had 6, so he could leave up Queller and Shrivel. The way that things are playing out, I like just having the more counter magic.
Yeah, it looks like he lets it die, then deals Jeffrey 2 and casts another Scrounger. He still has 3 mana up. So Serwinski goes for another Marvel. Jim has his choice of counter spells.
And with Jeffrey at 7 with 5 power on the battlefield, I think that Jim would just Spell Queller with no spell cast here, but hitting the Marvel, sure.
Swing for 7. On to game 4. Jim Davis, 2-1.
All right. Some mulligan issues being traded there as we are headed to our 4th game here.
But let's go back for a second here. Jim on the play. Turn 2 Scrounger. Double Queller, Shrivel.
His hand was excellent.
Jeffrey's 7s aren't going to beat that very frequently.
No, that's absolutely true.
His 4s certainly won't.
He cast multiple Aetherworks Marvel. Those weren't going to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, on a 7-card hand, what you'd see from Jeffrey is maybe a Harness Lightning and a Puzzle Knot on the way up to those double Marvels, but with all that, Jim had counter spells to spare.
In fact, the difference you would see against a 7-card hand there is Jeffrey would have had some energy before he cast those Marvels, but as we saw, those Marvels weren't resolving anyway.
He would have died with 7 energy instead of 1?
Right, exactly.
Okay. If Jim can get another start like that, it will likely send him to the semifinals. Now, game 4 will put Jeffrey Serwinski back on the play.
It's definitely good to be on the play, though. All of Jim's counter spells cost less mana than Aetherworks Marvel, which is very significant for the tempo deck.
Yeah, we have cards like Voltaic Brawler. I'm interested to see that in an Aetherworks sideboard. It implies that he has this aggressive board plan. Is there a matchup where you think he goes toward that?
I might go this direction. Theoretically, in the mirror, you can do it. These things generate a bunch of energy, and you can have a beatdown plan and then just keep beating them up, curving into Ishkana and what have you. Bristling Hydra in particular, I can tell you right now, if your opponent's casting Torrential Gearhulk, you want to have Bristling Hydra in your deck. That card is really good against control decks.
Yeah, I guess Jeskai Control, that's a deck that actually this Aetherworks struggles against. This could be a plan for that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before we have our 3 playmats on season 1 of the tour, and you're wondering, well, we don't, how do you make sure you get one every weekend? So by signing up, first of all, for a standard event, you'll get the standard one, a modern one, you'll get the modern playmat. But we now have, and this is new to 2017, we have our Infinite Challenge package. So what is the Infinite Challenge package? This is from StarSeedGames.com. It is a 2-day package. It is entry to all challenge events all weekend long. So this is for a 2-day weekend, which is most of our weekends. This is an $80 package. It's $100 and for a 3-day weekend, so a real steal for our invitationals. But you will get the StarSeedGames.com exclusive playmat in the off format of the event. So even if there's only standard or modern going on this weekend, but you want a gamble playmat, this is a way to do it. You can take advantage of these of our side event schedule. We have this Infinite Challenge package. We have more challenge events each weekend as well. So you can find out this and the schedule at starseedgames.com/schedule.
Yeah, if you're just interested in lower key events, maybe you're a limited player, the constructed offering's not for you.
Commander.
Kaladesh is a great limited environment from everything I've heard.
I love sealed. It's my favorite format, which is it's one of, I think, the undersold formats in Magic. Kaladesh Shield is very good.
The sealed format I played the most was Scars of Mirrodin, and it was a bad sealed format.
You picked one where one, the rares are
volatile.
So people
they either cost 6 and won the game or were lands.
People frequently talk about in sealed, they're like, oh man, it's all about the rares. And I'm like, well, that is really not always the case. So Scars, who actually have a lot of rares that are 4-power flyers that also destroy the whole board. There are 3 of them at rare, not even mythic.
In a lot of sealed environments, you can leverage your play skill, have kind of a scrappy, not very good pool, and you'll be able to pull off an X1. You'll get beat by one nutty deck or, have mulligan issues. In Scars of Mirrodin, if you were just leveraging skill and had a bad pool, you were like lucky to get that X2 record.
Yeah, I mean, I did okay with some bad pools. So the issues, and I think we've come so far from that.
Yes.
Whereas too many of the dragons kill things. Because there are so many artifacts, like every Mirror Battlesphere that's opened is being played, so people's decks are just a little bit better. On top of that, there was the Infect mechanic, which are really awesome in Draft. Your cards were generally just not playable in Sealed, so if you could open a sweet Infect card, right? And you just be like, well, I guess we're not playing that. We can't really.
I blocked with a lot of Cyst Bearers in my non-Infect decks.
Right, and so that card's fine.
All right, we got some standard magic happening though.
Jeffrey Serwinski on the play starts with Game Trail into Vessel of Nascency, and for the first time since Game 1, both players have kept 7s. We go over to Jim Davis. But no, really, Kaladesh Sealed, most of your major archetypes, of draft archetypes that you like, they're all playable and Sealed.
Oh, so you were skeptical about me talking about bringing in Fragmentize in this matchup.
That was great.
Yeah.
Concealed Courtyard, and Jim fragmentizes away the Vessel.
They'll turn off that card selection there. That is probably the best possible window for Fragmentize in the matchup.
As a combo player, when you cast a removal spell on my cantrips, I am very upset about this. Port Town, showing an island from Jim. And there have been Selfless Spirits out of the board. You are not wrong. Jim deciding between Spirit and Smuggler's Copter, he goes for the vehicle.
Yeah, generally you want to lead with the Copter, just attacks for more. The Spirit doesn't have anything that it needs to defend right now. So yeah, Copter on 2 makes a lot of sense. Attune
with the Aether from Jeffrey. Jim's follow-up's actually very good here. With the 3rd land, he has both Thraben Inspector and Selfless Spirit.
Okay, that's excellent. He would probably prefer, or maybe he does have Selfless Spirit, or Thraben Inspector plus Negate, as Jeffrey is approaching.
We're getting to that turn, aren't we?
Marvel mana.
This is interesting. So from Jim's side, with 3 Spell Shrivels and 1 Negate and 2 rebuffs, I like holding up counter spells. At the same time, I don't, because you have so few that game plan is touchy. And I'm not sure Jeffrey would respect it.
I would not bluff a counterspell. Bluffing counterspells was a very good thing to do in the year 2006 when people had respect.
Oh, wow.
It's not
those
true
youngins,
anymore.
They don't. Back when people would respect my counterspell, now they're just
going to play into it,
play all their
and
spells.
they're going to beat you every
better.
time.
Yeah, Grandpa, I know. It was, man.
It was a more civilized game.
Jim will play, it looks like Selfless Spirit.
Counterspells were also just a lot better back then.
Yeah, 2 mana could be a hard counter for everything.
Yeah.
He will crew the Copter with Selfless Spirit. Harness Lightning from Serwinski on the Copter. I mean, Negate is a modern playable Magic card. That's actually very good. And then you think about the card Counterspell. You're just like, that's better than Negate.
Yeah, I would say that Counterspell is the favorite in that comparison.
And if someone's going to tweet back and say, but Matthias double blue, I'm going to say, stop it.
I do think that Mana Leak is better than Counterspell in Modern if they were to print it, but that's beside the point.
Sure. Maybe. I don't know.
There's the one exception.
There's an argument.
It's called, the exception is Urza's Tower, and that's it.
Yeah. So what happens is Harness Lightning goes with a Smuggler's Copter. Jim decides to save it with his Selfless Spirit. So he deals 3, he loots, casts Toolcraft Exemplar, passes the turn. Discards Thraben Inspector. Interesting, he had his choice of 1-drops, Exemplar versus Thraben Inspector. He went for the attacker instead of the card advantage.
Yeah, and I believe that Jim does have a Spellcaller in hand, so he went Shields down that turn. He just needs to get these Copters going, because if you give Jeffrey enough time, it's not just about the Marvel. He starts casting his Ishkanas. Those are very problematic.
If your only counterspell is Spell Queller, and Jeffrey just plays an Ishkana, you look a little foolish.
Yep. No, you know, the way that this is shaping up, an Ishkana is going to be problematic for him if it does come down. Even just the 3-5 could pose some problems right now.
And this makes sense. Jaden has another 3-bit Inspector. He'll play it, get a clue. The Inspector will drive Smuggler's Copter. We only have 2 artifacts right now, not 3. Harness Lightning again on Smuggler's Copter. With 3 artifacts, the Toolcraft Exemplar would be swinging through the Servant. I'll be interested to see if Jim wants to quell the Harness Lightning and if he wants to attack. He's got a lot of decisions to make right now.
Yeah, Jeffrey did not commit a Marvel on the previous turn when the shields were down. So it looks like that's unlikely to happen in any kind of immediate way where the Spell Queller will be able to hit that, which makes it pretty inviting to just go for this removal spell here, keep his pressure up. Yeah, what he's really worried about in the game is, again, is Ishkana Graph Widow. That matters a lot more than Marvel here.
And it is the Spirit. 2/3 Spell Queller will get rid of the Harnessed Lightning. And this style of Magic, this is what took Jim to the top 8, playing this in Standard and Grixis Delver in Modern. You know, the low-end, some counter spells, some threats style decks.
So Jim actually does not want this Servant of the Conduit to go into Jeffrey's graveyard. His graveyard is currently Instant, Sorcery, Enchantment.
Oh.
3 card types.
Okay, yeah, no, I get it.
I would like to just attack with Smuggler's Copter here for Jim.
Well, especially because it's a trade with the Toolcraft Exemplar as well, right? It's not even a... If it had First Strike, maybe he lets him...
Right.
Yeah, and I think Jim's on the same line as you. He's just going to swing the Copter. Draws up to 2 cards. He's going to discard back to 1. Looks like he has Thalia and a land in hand, so land will go away.
If he's able to get through this turn here without Jeffrey making an Ishkana, which if Jeffrey, I suppose, if he does not play Evolving Wilds, so he can't do anything like use the Servant plus Evolving Wilds to Ishkana here. So with Jim coming back to his turn, suddenly that Thalia, that pressures Ishkana in a very significant way. It takes longer for those blockers to matter.
If Jeffrey sets up Delirium, maybe he has a Vessel. Something lets him get a Marvel or an Ishkana next turn. Thalia would be great against the Ishkana. All the Ishkana and all her spiders are coming to play tapped.
With Jeffrey passing the turn here, though, Jim's got to have Kozilek's Return on his mind.
Yeah, this is a scary pass. There are very few instants in the deck. But no land is great, so it's really the flashback on Kozilek's Return that Jim has trouble beating.
Mm-hmm.
You see he drew Reflector Mage this turn. He has some play, right? He can just Reflector Mage the Servant, and then Jeffrey's not getting to enough mana in time.
Yeah.
20 and 14 are the life totals. This is game number 4 of their 5-game set. If Jim wins it, there will be no need for a 5th game. He will move to the semifinals.
And this is a pretty good position for Jim. He needs a couple things to go right here, but not too much.
Reflector Mage on Servant of the Conduit. That'll go back in the hand. If he suspected Kozilek's Return, he probably wanted to post-combat the Reflector Mage. Perhaps Jeffrey would have killed it for him.
Yes and no. This allows him to punch through with the Inspector and the Exemplar. They wouldn't connect the other way, but...
well, if there's Kozilek's Return, they're going to die, right?
Yeah.
Oh, or you see Jim crewing the Copter and swinging. If there's no Kozilek's Return, then he's just in a great spot, and I think that's what's happening.
The thing was, if he had it, he had to cast it in combat either way, whether or not Jim plays the Reflector Mage, and the Mage doesn't die to the return, so it doesn't really make any difference to pre- or post-combat that.
Discards another Toolcraft Exemplar. And Jeffrey, no return, so we see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 damage. Serwinski's down to 5.
Still no Delirium. Still no 5th land.
I mean, if he draws a Marvel right now, maybe an Eldrazi saves him. Right, he could Marvel into Ulamog.
Right.
But he doesn't. It's a handshake, and Jim Davis of Metagame Gurus takes game number 4, and with it, he takes the match over Jeffrey Serwinski.
Yeah, and the things that Jim needed, they all went right there. He was able to get early pressure. He has these counter spells, Spell Queller. For Jeffrey, he wasn't able to produce a Marvel in that game, so Jim was able to get around any kind of threat of that happening. And this metagame, this top 8, as we see these Marvel decks be successful, this is the field that Jim wants. He's at the 4th seed. He was able to be on the play here, so And he did steal a game on the draw. This is a really good spot for Jim, just with all these Marvel decks in the top 8. So moving on to the semifinals.